looked at the calendar and happened to notice that Friday is upon us. That's the only way I know what day of the week it is. We're all sort of trapped in this time warp. Nothing seems to change day by day. But the Torah is referred to as an Eitz Chaim, a tree of life, and it constantly renews itself by our understanding of it, day after day, week after week, as we repeat the cycle annually. And each time we see something new, something speaking to us. This week's Torah portion is a combined Torah portion of Matos and Masei. The first Torah portion tells us of a famous incident when the Jews are ready to cross over into Israel, and the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh inform Moshe they want to stay right here. They're happy where they are. There's good land for their sheep to graze, and they're just going to remain just over the river on this side. Moshe is so upset by this, and he said, you're going to allow your brothers to cross over and fight for the land, and you're going to sit here and do nothing? And then the tribe of Reuven, Gad, and half of Manasseh said, no, we'll cross over and fight for the land, and then we'll come back and settle this side of the Jordan. And that's what happened. Now, several years ago, I used this story to relate to a very serious issue in Israel, where the ultra-Orthodox don't serve in the army. They say that sitting in a yeshiva is defending the country. But you ask any mother who has a son standing on the border of Lebanon or Gaza, and a son studying in the yeshiva, which mother sleeps better at night? And so I use this story of the 2.5 tribes to relate to the fact that all the Jews in Israel should have to fight for the country. That was then. Now, it has a completely different meaning to me as related to our current circumstances. Let me ask you a question. There is a group living in China called the Uyghurs. I think that's how it's pronounced. They're one of the 55 minorities living in China, and they've been there since time immemorial. And in the 10th century, they converted to Islam and have been practicing Muslims ever since. And the current Chinese regime doesn't like that, sees them as a threat. And so there's 1 million Uyghurs who are in re-education camps where they're being re-educated out of Islam. There are 1 million Uyghurs whose wives and daughters are being forced to use all sorts of birth control devices so that they not reproduce more Muslims. And what does the Muslim world say? You don't hear much. Can you imagine if it was 1 million Jews? You think we would keep quiet now? So why are the Muslim countries quiet? So here's a new way of reading the story of what happened with the 2.5 tribes. The 2.5 tribes went to Moshe and they said to him, and these are their words, we will build sheepfolds here for our cattle and cities for our little ones. Moshe was enraged. You know why he was enraged? According to the Midrash, he was enraged because of the order in which they spoke. They were first concerned about their cattle, and then they were concerned about their children. They had their priorities all wrong. The Muslim countries are now issuing an outcry about China because they have priorities wrong. They care about their cattle and their sheep and their oil and the billion-dollar business they've established with China. And they're putting that before the lives of their own fellow Muslims, forgetting the priorities. Life is much more precious than money. We should take this lesson to heart here in our country. We're very conflicted these days between whether to open up or whether to lock down, whether to Zoom school or attend school. And there's no definitive answer. But in making the decision, let's keep in mind, people come before money. People come before the sheep. Yes, the coronavirus is taking a terrible economic toll on us. But life comes first. And all decisions should be made with this in mind. Perhaps it was best expressed by a letter to the editor in a newspaper in Fort Worth, Texas, by a Sharon Austri, who wrote, "Dear all elected officials, as a very old woman living in Texas, I'm sorry, but I'm just not ready to die so you can take credit for saving the stock market." That's true for old people and children as well. Shabbat Shalom.